It's time to talk Disney Vacation Club home resorts. If you are thinking about joining Disney Vacation Club, choosing your home resort is one of the most important decisions you can make. And it's also one of the most confusing. So today I'm breaking it all down in simple terms. What is a DVC home resort? Your home resort is the resort that your DVC contract is tied to. It will affect how much you pay up front, how much you pay in annual dues, when you can book, and how long your contract will last. Think of a home resort as your home base in the DVC system, even if you don't ever stay there. At your home resort, you can book 11 months out. At all the other DVC resorts, you can book 7 months out. That 4-month difference is huge for in-demand resorts and in-demand specific room types. Here are all the current DVC resort options. At Disney World, you have Bay Lake Tower at Contemporary, Beach Club Villas, Boardwalk Villas, Boulder Ridge and Copper Creek at Wilderness Lodge, Grand Floridian Villas, Old Key West, Saratoga Springs Riviera Resort, Polynesian Villas and Bungalows, Animal Kingdom Villas, and the cabins at Fort Wilderness. Outside of Disney World, you have the villas at Disneyland Hotel, Grand Californian, Aulani, Hilton Head, and Vero Beach. Now that you have your dream resort in mind and we've had our fun, it's time to talk cost. For your initial purchase price, different resorts cost different amounts per point. As a general rule of thumb, older resorts are generally cheaper and newer, more in-demand resorts are generally more expensive. But location, demand, contract length, and resale restrictions all impact those prices. Also, the old supply and demand comes into effect. If you want a home resort that is in hot demand and low supply, you're gonna pay more. For example, Saratoga Springs and Old Key West, you're generally going to get for a cheaper purchase price. Beach Club, Boardwalk, Grand Floridian, Polynesian, you're generally going to pay more for them because they're in higher demand. Annual dues. Every DVC owner pays annual dues. Your annual dues are based on your home resort and the number of points you have. Some resorts have a lower buy-in but higher annual dues. Others cost more upfront but have more stable, lower annual dues. For example, Vero Beach and Hilton Head are some of the cheapest per point contracts you can get. But their annual dues are significantly higher, which could add up in the long run. I just pulled up a Vero Beach resale contract that is 200 points for $47 per point. So you're only paying around $9,400 for 200 Disney Vacation Club points. That actually feels like a really good deal. I need to check my Disney add-on-itis right now because that's tempting. But Vero Beach does tend to have the highest annual dues. In 2026, their annual dues were $14.89 per point. So if you had that 200-point contract, that means in 2026 you would have paid $2,978 in your annual dues. And annual dues tend to go up every year. Whereas I just pulled a Grand Floridian contract, for 200 points, you can get a Grand Floridian resale contract for $150 per point for 200 points. So you're paying $30,000 for 200 points. The dues for Grand Floridian in 2026 were $8.31 per point. So you would pay $1,662 for your annual dues at Grand Floridian. Again, those tend to go up every year. Also remember, those prices that I just said are all for resale contracts. So keep that in mind. If you buy directly through Disney, your price is going to be a lot more significant. For the contract, not for annual dues. Annual dues are the same price no matter if you bought resale or directly through Disney. So, initial price per point and annual dues needs to be a factor when considering which Disney resort to make your home resort. You can't just go with the cheapest contract because that doesn't always make the most sense. When we were looking for our DVC contract, we wanted a resort that was on the lower end of price per point for our initial contract and also on the lower end of the annual dues. We weren't looking for the lowest of the low, but something on that end of the scale for both. So we were able to narrow it down when we bought to Old Key West, Animal Kingdom, and Saratoga Springs. Buying direct versus resale. This is very important. If you buy directly through Disney, they are currently selling Riviera, cabins at Fort Wilderness, and the new Polynesian Bungalows. You can still purchase contracts for some of those older resorts. You're just going to need to ask your DVC guide about those. If you buy resale, contracts exist for all of the resorts, but you're gonna find a much more limited selection for those brand new resorts. Resale restrictions, we gotta talk about it. Here's the simplified version of resale restrictions. If you buy a resale contract at Riviera, Villas at Disneyland, or at the Cabins at Fort Wilderness, you will only be allowed to stay at that resort. Whatever your home resort is, that is the only one you are allowed to stay at if you bought resale for those 3 resorts. If you bought directly for those 3 resorts, you can stay at any DVC resort, but it is still something you should keep in mind for the future if you plan on reselling your contract. If you buy resale at one of the original 14 DVC properties, you can then stay at any of those original 14 properties, but not the new ones. Resale restrictions came out in, I believe, 2019. So anything built after that, you will not be eligible to stay at. For example, if you buy a resale contract at Beach Club, you can stay in these resorts. Also, if you buy a resale contract at any of these resorts, you can stay at Beach Club and any of these resorts. Contract length. This is not based on when you buy. It is based on your home resort. This part tends to surprise people. So for example, Saratoga Springs Resort contracts go till 2054. Bought mine about 6 years ago. Other people bought theirs 10 years ago. It doesn't matter. Both of our contracts expire in 2054. Many other resorts expire before that date, and the newer resorts are going to expire after that date. That can be a big factor if you're thinking long term or if you're buying later in life. So how should you choose your DVC home resort? That's the big old debate. Do you buy where you want to stay, or do you buy where you feel like it's financially the best choice? There's no single right answer. It depends on how flexible you are. A lot of people are going to say, buy where you want to stay. Which makes sense. Your home resort matters a lot if you have to stay at Beach Club or Boardwalk, if you have to stay at club level in Animal Kingdom Lodge, if you want the lowest per night room type at any of the resorts except for maybe Old Key West and Saratoga, if you always travel during busy season, or if you are not flexible with your dates or your room types. A lot of rooms, especially the things that I just talked about, book out before the 7-month mark. The 7-month mark, again, remember, is when anybody in DVC can book those room types. At 11 months, you can book your home resort. At 7 months, you can book any of the available DVC properties to you. So if one of those things I just said applies to you, you should be really particular about which resort you choose for your home resort. Your home resort matters less if you are flexible with your days, if you are open to split stays, if you don't plan on booking at the 7th or 11th month mark window, if you're okay staying almost anywhere, and if you're willing to adjust your room type, likely to a higher level view or to a larger room. If those things are the case, your home resort matters a lot less. You might want to consider other factors in choosing your home resort instead of where you want to stay. We ended up choosing Saratoga Springs as our home resort. We have only stayed there once. That will all change this summer though when we go to stay at the Treetop Villas there. We have stayed at Beach Club, Boardwalk, Animal Kingdom multiple times, Copper Creek, Bay Lake Tower at Contemporary, we've stayed there multiple times. And in addition to staying at the Treetop Villas at Saratoga, we will also be staying at Grand Floridian on our upcoming trip. We went into joining DVC knowing that we wanted to stay at all the available resorts. We didn't want to just stay at the same place over and over again. The resorts we most wanted to stay at prior to actually joining DVC were Animal Kingdom, Contemporary, Bay Lake Tower, and Beach Club. But we went with Saratoga Springs. And these are the 5 reasons we made that decision. 1 was price. We bought a 150-point contract to Saratoga Springs for $98 per point. 2 were annual dues. The Saratoga Springs annual dues aren't the cheapest, but they aren't the highest. They're kind of in the middle, and we felt comfortable with that price. 3, the contract length at Saratoga Springs. It runs until 2054, which is longer than several of the other home resorts. 4, we genuinely like Saratoga. If we had to stay at Saratoga every single time we went to Disney World, we would be okay with it. 5, we're flexible, and we knew that going into purchasing DVC that we like split stays. So we're okay with staying at one resort for 4 days and at another resort for 5 days all on the same vacation. The split stays help with being able to book some of the harder to book resorts and rooms because you're not looking for 7+ days at one resort. We can look for 3 days or 4 days. And we knew going in that split stays were totally something that not only we were okay with doing, but we wanted to do. Currently, how we like to plan our trips is we like to stay for part of our trip in a Epcot Hollywood Studios resort. Then we like to stay for part of our trip in a Magic Kingdom resort. And then we like to stay for part of our trip in one of the resorts that we just love, which would be Animal Kingdom Lodge, really. Or we also love Beach Club, we love Boardwalk. I mean, we love them all, to be honest, but that's kind of how we break up our trips right now, because that's what works for us. Final thoughts. Your home resort impacts the price you pay, flexibility, booking stress, and how long your contract lasts. There is no best home resort, only what works for you and your family. Phew, that was a lot. In future videos, I will be breaking down the pros and cons of each of the available home resorts. So make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on those video notifications so you don't miss anything. And let me know, if you're buying today, what would you choose as your home resort? I'll see you next time.